Today's show is brought to you by homebrewsupply.com. Homebrew Supply is your one-stop shop for brew day ingredients, recipes, equipment, and more. Take advantage of everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping only at homebrewsupply.com. Go to homebrewsupply.com right now and use our promo code HHH to get 5% off your order. homebrewsupply.com. Let us help make your brew day better.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
What makes a lager, gear for partial mash brewing, Suckback oxidation, and I get to talk about Kolsch. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 203. Hello and welcome back to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today, I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com right over there, Mr. James Carlson. My friend, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine, sir.
I like the... Were you a beauty queen one day? That was
one
good.
Day maybe. Yeah, I can dream.
You can dream. That is the dream. That's the ultimate dream. I always had aspirations of being in pageants, but my dad wouldn't let me. It was a heartbreak.
I'm so glad Emily didn't have those aspirations.
You know, my kids don't even know about, like, we have friends who are like dance parents or pageant parents, and here's an unpopular opinion to start off the show. Dance moms are just as creepy to me as pageant moms. I said it. I'm sorry. That's a little broad. I'm sorry. In my area of Central Texas, in my middle-class suburbia, the dance moms take it so serious. They take it so serious.
Oh, yeah.
They take it so serious.
From what I've seen on Toddlers and Tiaras, I don't watch it, but the previews and the commercials, it's like, geez, I couldn't be one of those.
You know what? If you listen to this, if you're one of the tens of people who listen and you happen to be a dance parent, I'm not judging you. No, I'm judging you. I'm sorry. But you could judge me.
IMO, right? Isn't that the thing?
Yeah, that's right.
IMO.
You're right. And on social media, if I just preface it with not to sound like a bad person, and then I say stuff that makes me sound like a bad person, but it's like, no, I prefaced it, guys. Or if you put an emoji at the end, then it makes it all okay. You can say really terrible things and just put an emoji at the end, and everyone's like,
or
oh.
LOL.
Yeah, LOL. Yeah, I noticed I do that crap way too much in text threads where I'm like, why? First off, I didn't actually laugh out loud, and why am I ending all of these things with LOL? LOL. Todd probably thinks like, this doofus is always laughing. What an idiot! oh yeah, I was telling him I'm gonna make this conversation weird. You know, I have to take my dog in on Monday, and
I saw that.
Poor Stuart. He's almost 17 years old, but it's time. But when I was telling Todd about it, I almost put like, hey, just letting you know, on Monday at 8 a.m., I have an appointment with the vet for Stuart, and I'm so accustomed to writing LOL, I almost put it at the end of it. I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? This isn't an LOL. My best.
Yeah, we're going to have to LOL.
Yeah, LOL, yeah. I know. I was like, it's the worst. That's how stupid I am, and how maybe I just don't pay attention to the words I use in text messages. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. We are so happy for you to join us this week. If you are perceptive, you notice that Mr. Burns is not here today. Todd is with his pop. They're in Abilene at the hospital. The good news is that Pierce's surgery went well, and he's recovering, and he's stable, and so far so good. Everything's going well. The bad news is they don't know how long he'll have to be in the hospital right now. But the hospital is the place you want to be when you're in these situations and have a team of doctors monitoring you and taking good care of him. I hear he's coherent. Todd.
Yeah, he told Todd that, hey, it's the first time he's felt normal in a while.
Yeah. So
that's got to be a good
I was going to
sign.
say, the guy, he just turned 86 in September, and he's in better health than I am. We have the same doctor. He told me. He said, this guy's, but no, we don't have the same doctor. But he's he is objectively in better health than us, actually.
That's me too, yeah.
I think of all the times that Pierce Burns has outmanned me in the 13 years I've known him. It's a lot. It's been a lot. Yeah. So, but I'm happy to hear that he's doing well. He's recovering, and we wish him the best. And so Todd had to take off this week from the show to be with his dad. But don't worry, I'll do some impersonations of him throughout this show.
He's still got his laptop with him, and he's been monitoring emails and calling me a lot.
Me too. I know he's still he can't not work. Have you noticed that? Like it only when he's in Europe for family vacation, and that time he went to Hawaii. And even then, remember, he did the podcast with us still.
He did. He was still doing emails and checking up. And I feel like a bad employee because when I go on vacation, I go on vacation. I get out of that, I might check an email every now and then.
Right.
For the most part, my attitude is the whole purpose of a vacation is to get away from work. So I try real hard to get away from work.
Todd breathes work. It's nuts to me.
He does.
And I always assume, because I have hereditary high blood pressure and I can make better dietary choices. I always assume like his blood pressure's got to be through the roof. He's probably always stressed. We do a reading on him. It's like, 113 over 76 or whatever. Like, shut up. Yeah. I'm medicated and I'm like 148 over 90. That jerk. I'm the picture of health.
Yeah,
there's the first impression.
Pretty healthy.
He is pretty on paper. Yeah, that is true. That he has good genes because look at his pop. His pop is kicking through. So yes, the home. What do we have for our small talk? Todd's dad's recovering well. Oh, the upcoming election live stream, as of right now, is still planned. I'm going to be up there at the ranch. Todd and I are going to do a drinking cast. I was told not to call it a drunk cast because that comes across as trashy. So we are going to we're going to be enjoying some malted beverages on the patio with the live stream setup going, and we're gonna be giving you live election results. You won't want to miss it. Our commentary is either going to make you laugh or you're going to block us out of your life for the rest of your life.
That will be the last thing I would ever want to do is watch that damn election. I'm telling you. That's why. Part of it.
I'm making bingo cards for Todd and I, but the trick is, you're always going to hit bingo, and you have to drink every time you hit a square on your bingo. So we're going to get sloshed. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
We're going to get sloshed.
Well, the good thing is hopefully, I can't say that. I was going to say, hopefully it'll be over the next day.
Come on. No. And neither will the party. We're going to keep the party going.
Made sure of that,
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for sure. So if you are a member of our Patreon, you can catch it at facebook.com/homebrew happy hour. And every member of our Patreon from $1 up to the top tiers, $50 tier, can join that group. And if you want to watch our live stream and participate, but you don't do Facebook, you can message me and I'll give you a YouTube streaming link. I'm working on, we've been able to stream to our YouTube. Or the only way that the Restream software right now is having us do it to the actual main YouTube page, but I believe I found a workaround where I can do a custom thing and get it to go into a private link. So if you want that, if you're going to participate but you don't do Facebook, just shoot me a message through patreon.com/homebrew happy hour, and I'll make sure you get a link and you can enjoy or not enjoy or laugh at us or whatever. I have no idea what to expect. Todd and I both don't really have a dog in this fight, so besides America, obviously I bleed red, white, and blue. But like our feelings aren't going to get hurt at whatever happens. So my candidate, Kanye Omari West, is not expected to win. So I'm not holding my breath. But anyway, so that is still going on. That'll be Tuesday, November the 3rd, and I'll be up there for the whole week. We're going to do the show that week then as well, and I think we're doing it with some grain repurposing company out of San Antonio. I think is that week's episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
cool.
they get spent grains from breweries, craft breweries in San Antonio, and then sell it as a cheap alternative and like low carbohydrate alternative to grain for baking, and they have like a pancake mix. They have a lot of stuff going on. The founder of there, I forget his name, is going to do the show. I believe it's November the 5th. So if that changes,
Gosh, I just can't imagine grain husks tasty.
healthy people do silly things, man. I forgot to bring you kombucha last time I was up there. I was just say, have you tried kombucha?
No.
People swear by it being healthy, and it tastes terrible. I try to get people to brew it, but I talk bad about it. That's counterintuitive. I think the spent grains, I agree with you. I would be interested to see how they're supposed to send us a mix a bag of their pancake mix. So
Yeah.
we'll make pancakes there at the barn, and we'll be the judge. And y'all know us, if you've been around long enough, we don't mince words. We either, if we're polite, we just exclude it. We just don't bring it up. And then you know how we felt, or we're honest with you. This is segueing into the next part of small talk. My dad and I did the brew day on the Spite Solo prototype that we were given. And,
Cool.
yeah, it was cool. There's still, so that basket is obviously one of the things that they changed now in the consumer release, which thank God, because the basket is not that great.
Did you have a hard time with circulation? Is that what it was?
Terrible time with circulation. Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that you're using rye or wheat or anything.
Correct. Yeah. The basket was not allowing for the liquid to come through the grains and drain down to recirculate. So it would work in like 10-second spurts before it ran out of a pool to draw water from. And
so that's what it was doing, if you remember last time.
It exactly. No, it is. It was poor design, and I understand, and that's why on the live stream, our Patreon members who got to watch it, I was very transparent that it was a prototype unit. And I'm not trying to disparage Spike. We love Spike, and we believe in their products. But for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why they'd send that prototype out to people, because they wanted us to do a review of it and publicly publish it. And we kind of told them after we first used it, like, man, you don't want us to, especially if you made changes, because then our reviews are going to be like, this basket is not that great. You have to do a lot of workarounds. Here's what you have to do. It's a pain in the butt. But we hear they fixed it in the no, that doesn't.
Yeah, I've heard that they've done, and I think honestly that was probably because I think we were one of the first people to get.
We were
a prototype,
and that's why I'm saying, that's why I told them, and and Ryan was cool with it when I told him, like, you don't want us to review this prototype. Like, if you want to send us a retail unit, even one that you want back,
or just swap the baskets out.
We'll do, and
I think that was the only issue, because the fit finish is always flawless. The controllers seem to work perfect.
Exactly. And it did. And like I said, everything, the controller was finicky, but I say finicky. Our temperature probe was all over the place. And
you know why,
times.
Right?
I don't know why.
Okay, well, imagine this. Okay, anytime that you have a temperature probe down under the basket and you have circulation problems, that means that probe's going to be out of the wort and in the wort. Was it jumping back and forth from temperature?
It was. Yep.
That's exactly why.
I should have called you.
With the recirculation, especially on an all-in-one, when that could be considered an all-in-one,
yes,
for sure.
For sure.
So if you don't have circulation, in other words, you have volume building up in the basket, that means it's not getting out. Couple of things could be it. One thing, which is my dumbass did, is I double milled the grains, because I was thinking brewing a bag, not brewing a basket, and we already covered that. So life lesson there. Or just you've got lots of wheat or anything that's a non-hulled grain that can promote sticking, and so you kind of have to do a little bit of homework and first and foremost figure out why it's not circulating. Is it a machine issue or is it a grain issue? And most of the time it's a grain issue. What I always tell everybody is rice hulls are really cheap, so get you 4 or 5 pounds of that. That's a lot of rice hulls, but it's easy to put in, and it doesn't affect anything other than a grain absorption might be a little bit more. But if you're doing an all-in-one and 1.5 to 1 grain to water ratio, or water to grain ratio, I should say, it promotes better flowing. So definitely keep it at 1.5 to 1, and don't go below that, because it doesn't all-in-one machines don't like that I found out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I should have had you write me a pamphlet, because we did Like we're I told my dad with this prototype before we do anything, before we drill a hole, like because fortunately our Patreon community is full of a ton of people who know what they're doing as well. And I'm a little worried some of them are trying to take my job, but by how good with knowledge they are and how open and willing they are to share. But either way,
great, because I picked up the phone the other day because our salesman was gone out of the office, and it was so funny. You'll love this. And I was like, "Can I help you?" And he started talking, and he stopped, and he said, "James," and I'm like, "Yeah."
He was like, how could you tell? Oh, I don't know. Lucky guess.
Yeah. Was it the accent? Was it rather thick? He could have been nicer. And it was flattering. And we talked for a good while. And I think that's cool. Yeah. We're just like you guys. We just brew beer. We just happen to talk about it on YouTube and Stitcher.
And sometimes our beer turns out good. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes our brew days are smooth. Never when there's cameras rolling, but sometimes. So my dad and I are going to give the system its fair shot in doing and changing things up, because like what we also determined after our brew day, and it was the breakfast stout clone, and we hit our number. We ended up, thank God for Brewer's Friend and their calculators, that we were able to figure out, we need to add some water because of what we lost, because of how vigorous our boil was, and we hit our numbers at the end. Fermentation went well, and I'm expecting the beer to be good. We're expecting it to be good, but we are going to make some changes because we did chalk it up at the end of the day to having to remember every system's kind of unique, and you got to dial it in and then adjust for that. In a perfect world, everything will just work straightforward the same, no matter whether you're cooler brewing or 3-tier or all-in-one. But that's just not the case, because in reality, this all-in-one, it might be off a little degrees, and then you calibrate or you calculate for that discrepancy. You're like, okay, it started boiling. Every time it starts boiling, but it reads at 209. So I know that we're always 3 degrees over what it actually says on that. So I'm just going forward, we're going to adjust for that. We're going to know if we need to be at 152, it really needs to be at 155, and that's actually 152. Rinse and you know what I mean? Like there's things you have to make adjustments for, and that goes with every system. And so I was people who watched our live stream probably observed how frustrated I was, but I hope I reined it in at least at the end, and trying to remember, like, one, we hit our numbers. Brew days go like that sometimes, and that happens. But like I said, life lesson. You live and you learn, and you go forward and you apply what you learn to future brew days, and you ideally don't mess up again. So
here's what I would do if I was you, is all the PIDs that I see and I know and I've operated on you can calibrate those things. So you can do an offset, like a 3-degree offset from what it reads, the thermocouple reads, and you can dial that temperature dead on.
It's funny. I think it was Gilbert. Somebody in our chat when we were doing the live stream, when I said, like, what would y'all recommend we do? Because nowhere in the instructions does it talk about calibrating it. And he wrote, I would take it to James and ask him to fix it. And I said, that's what you're right. How did I not think of that first? That's what I usually do 9 out of 10 times, is take it to James and say, because I play incompetent to a T. I'm really good. And you
I actually found, and I'll find that PDF and email it to you. I found the instructions to that PID, because they're using a different one. The one they were using before was Love Controls, and this one's different. Okay. But I found the operating instructions for that. So you already know where you need to be. You're reading 3 degrees too low. So do 3-degree offset. You should be perfect.
Yeah, email that to me, because my dad would totally, because he does not like the solution of, well, we just know we're 3 degrees below. What he wants it to be 1 for 1.
Like that either.
Yes. Yeah. You engineer
and I'm not
types.
like Todd. I'm not sticking thermometers in every part of the mash tun to see where we're at.
Oh, Todd's the worst.
Levels of temperature, but
Todd doesn't trust. No. Todd could calibrate. He trusts a calibrated thermometer, but he doesn't trust your calibrated PID. It doesn't make sense. But you're right. I wish we just had a Todd cam on y'all's brew day. It's like you have to take a shot every time he takes the temperature. Like you'd be plastered by boil. You'd be plastered.
And he does brew a good beer, though. So
okay, you're right.
Sometimes the details are the devil's in the details.
You're right. He does. All right. Last thing of small talk, and then I'm going to get us into our questions. recipe. You can still get in on this in our October for both tiers, $35 and $50. Every member of $35 has an opportunity to get the new updated Horst Dornbusch version of our True to Style alt beer, which I say it's his version. It's the version going forward now forever, if anyone ever orders it on the site. But we have started shipping those out to Patreon members. Be on the lookout. If you didn't get your tracking information, you can message me at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour, which is also the same address you can sign up for our Patreon at any top 2 level and just tell me, yeah, I want that recipe this month. And then if you're in the 35, you'll be every other month after that. If you're in the 50, you get a recipe kit every month. Both those tiers also get the premium welcome pack, which comes with a pint glass. It comes with a t-shirt. It comes with a CM Becker hat. It comes with all the favorite Todd Burns messing up stickers. And him with his refractometer. It comes with the Kolsch die. It comes with a lot, guys, and that's a one-time gift. And frequently, like Todd likes to remind people, we try to the pint glass is a new addition, and we also have other stuff coming down the pipeline for. We're trying to get it out before the holiday season so we can send it as a thank you gift to our Patreon members in those tiers. But anyway, if you just go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour, get all the information there. Mr. Carlson, I have 4 questions for us for this week's episode, starting with question number 1, came from our buddy Tim, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Tim wrote, "Hi Josh, I'm a fellow jiu-jitsuer from up north who got into brewing with my pops a few years ago too. I have a question about recipes and beer styles. I recently had an IPL, which is an India Pale Lager, that to me tasted very much like an IPA, which led me to wonder if anything brewed with a lager yeast is automatically a lager, or is it more to do with recipe formulation? What if you ferment lager yeast warm or only lager it for 2 weeks? Or do you just name it in the style you were going for, like the blonde alt beer that we did? Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work." You know, not to be like existentialist or whatever kind of philosopher, it's all relative, man. You name whatever you want. Who's going to correct you? No, I mean, we don't have the Reinheitsgebot to guide us in America, if you can't tell, at any given Pacific Northwest brewery. But if, Mr. Carlson, I mean, I think the easy answer to this is lagers use lager yeast and ales use ale yeast. What other characteristics would you say are true to lagers?
Well, what you got to remember first is a lager yeast was developed to be able to consume sugars at a colder temperature where an ale yeast wouldn't do it. It would just stop. It would go dormant. So the whole purpose, this is what I get out of the IPLs, is you want to have a cleaner, you don't want any esters coming through on the yeast. So you want to project as much hop aroma, flavor, and bitterness as you can without anything else clouding that up. That's what my opinion of an India Pale Lager is. Now, keep in mind, a lager yeast will ferment at room temperature just like it will at colder temperatures. It'll ferment faster like an ale. But the esters, think about this, the warmer it goes, the more esters come out of the yeast. A yeast is happier when it's warm, but it goes to town and it produces all kinds of different flavors. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. Depends on what kind of yeast it is and what temperature it is. So if you're wanting to do an India Pale Lager, you're wanting to create, or if I was going to do an India Pale Lager, I want to create something that just projected the hops. The hops are the showcase, and the backbone is the base malts, of course. You want a little more body, I would think. I would want to do a little more body with an IPL, but I don't want any esters that from the yeast contributing to maybe changing the way that beer should taste. I've done a lot of beers with lager yeast at room temperature, and it does produce the esters, but for the most part, very enjoyable to drink. We did a Sam Adams summer lager, and I used lager yeast at room temperature, and it's one of the better beers I've brewed.
I thought it turned out great too. I thought it turned out really good. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with IPLs. Are they just as hop forward as IPAs are known for?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. They're the whole deal about an IPL is you get to taste, smell more of the hop aromas with an IPL because the yeast doesn't contribute anything that might overlook that or might cover some of that up in the beer itself. So I think that was, I could be wrong, but I think that, the IPAs and the IPLs is really not my thing, but from what I've seen and read and tasted, I think that the whole purpose of an IPL is just to really bring out the brightness of the hops and not much anything else.
Are there any other commercial examples you can think of for an IPL? Like if someone said, I want to try that style, what you would recommend them to at their store?
I wish I could tell you that. My feeling about that.
Yeah, I was going to say though, because like this is the most flattering you've been about hop forward beers in a while, and I was just thinking like, well, I'm trying to think maybe are IPLs like, because for me, when I drink a lager, something that stands out, mouthfeel usually stands out to me from a lager, like from a base lager and a base ale, and crispiness, if that makes sense. Like they're
just clean. To me, if I had one word to describe a lager, it's clean tasting. I mean, there's nothing. We have all brewed, and we've had ale beers that have esters in the final product. A good example to me, and I'm sure somebody will disagree with me, would be Hefeweizen beers. That one of the esters that comes out of that wheat beer yeast is that clovey banana taste, and I'm not a big super fan of that. If I was to brew a wheat beer, I would probably try brewing a wheat lager instead of using a Hefeweizen yeast, because I don't want that in the beer. I want a cleaner. I want to me, I'm a malt guy, but I also want the hops to complement the malt itself, balanced beers, which is why I do like the German beers and the Reinheitsgebot purity law makes sense to me. I totally get that.
It's I was going to say that you made me a believer of the Reinheitsgebot, of the German styles, and just that they're beers that are balanced and enjoyable all the time. Like it is very refreshing to have, like, in balanced. It's hard to quantify it with words, where it's like nothing is punching you in the face, and it's a symphony just of taste. Like it's not like even, I don't know if you would if this would have fallen under a German style. Your recent brown ale or brown lager,
brown lager,
the one that we call it was James's brown lager, so I just called it James Brown Lager, which I hear is gone now, or are you out of it? I'm
out of it at home. Yeah.
So what?
I'm gonna rebrew that, because I think I can tweak that recipe.
It was good. It was good.
So, some of that not the bitterness, but that coffee, dark roast, it had a little bit too much. It wasn't bad, but it had just a little bit too much. So I think you back that off about 20%. I think it'd be even better.
Is that going to be a recipe that because I had no less than 50, and I might give or take 10 people. I had a lot of people message me that they wanted that recipe. They saw first. I think I reposted a picture you did of it with all the lacing that was left over.
Yeah.
That was a good picture, by the way.
Yeah, you know what? I can tell y'all exactly. It's real simple. I had some malt left in the freezer, and I thought, I'll just use it. It's getting to the point where if you freeze malt for a certain amount of time, the husks kind of get brittle, and then you'll get a stuck fermentation. Sometimes you can wet them down, but then it's best to just use it. And these have been sitting in the freezer for a couple of 2 or 3 years. So I thought, I'm just going to use it all. So I put 30 pounds of Pilsen malt. I used 1.5 pounds of Carapils, and then I used 1 pound of Carafa 2. Now that's debittered, dehusked, roasted German malt. And this was a 15-gallon batch. So what I would do is I would use the same amounts, but I would back off and do 1/2 to 3/4 pound of the Carafa 2. The brown, it was awful dark. The color would come back a little bit. I still think it would be brown, but I think it really would work fantastic.
And see, I didn't remember, because you are no stranger to not only using everything you have lying around, but also I remember you doing one that you called a monster ale that was a mystery beer, basically. This one, though, this brown lager was not a mystery. You knew what you were doing. You had to make a recipe off of what you had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the 30 pounds of Pilsen malt in my freezer, so I bought 1 pound of the Carafa 2, and then I bought 1.5 pounds of Carapils, and I used 1.5 pounds of Magnum at 60, and then I did 3 ounces of Tanager at the flame out, and that's it. Super simple. I brewed it at, I believe I mashed at 150 degrees, and went ahead and did a mash out at 68. And that can tend to produce a little more body at the end because our system takes a little while to get from 150, 152 to 168 degrees. Hold that for 20 minutes. Get your sparge water up to I'll do about 178 degrees because of the temperature offset. And if you do between 170 and 178 degrees on a 15-gallon batch, by the time you get enough in there, you can bring that up to 70. You just play around with those temperatures. You know your system and what you need to do. But you want to get that, once you get that to 168, what that's going to do is going to stop what you're trying to do as far as sugars and body, and then get it to 170 coming out. And that'll get as much sugar as you can get out without causing any tannins to flow in. And the reason why I say 178 on my system, it doesn't flow as well as it should. That doesn't mean that it's a bad system. It just, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And,
yeah, totally.
And it would take, and I'll do, Todd taught me this. He'll expel most of the wort in the mash tun before he introduces the sparge water. And that helps you get there a little quicker. So I play around with the temperatures, but 170, 171, 72, that's fine. But I wouldn't go much warmer than that because then tannins start flowing out of the hulls. And then you don't want to add any extra off flavors to the beer.
No.
But real simple to do. It took, I was using a repitched harvest yeast. And I actually started with the Oktoberfest. I saved the best cake or the pack of the yeast in the middle is where usually I'll pull from. And then I repitched it into the smash pills, and then did this, repurposed that. And then on the smash pills, because I had basically washed the yeast going into the pills. Third time I thought, you know what? I'm just going to see if this works. I just pumped right into, I kegged the pills and I pumped the brown lager right on top of that yeast cake. It fermented in 3 days, completely finished out in 3 days.
No
cool.
way.
It did.
Dude. And Todd, it was so funny because we've said it a million times, but I still like bringing it up when you talk about harvesting yeast and reusing it. It's because you don't like to waste anything, and it's perfectly good yeast, and you have you have the ability to do it and harvest it. People have written in before like, are y'all doing that because it's like a necessity, trying to save money? Well, yes, James is a penny pusher. He is. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to open up, but also their yeast is that good for multiple generations like that. That's one thing that I think it's a great compliment to Imperial that you can continue. Like, what was the most? Was it 5 or 6 generations on a Kolsch?
5.
It was 5.
I did.
You did.
Yeah,
and
I did
you could have
5
went more.
batches.
You really could have went more, but you're like, I don't want to press my luck on another batch. And that 5th one was incredible. Like
yeah, but you could see there was a curve there. So as the second and third pitch, it actually got to tasting better. I don't know if you noticed, but that Kolsch was getting cleaner, better tasting. And then by about the 4th time, you could see, well, it wasn't quite as good as the 3rd batch, but it wasn't bad. It was really good. And by the 5th pitch, you could tell you were kind of on level with the first batch. So still all of them very, very good, but drinkable beers.
You're absolutely right, though. I do remember like the 3rd being like, dang, do that every time.
That was the tops. Now, if you do this, it is possible to do it with each repitch, but you've got to do a little more homework. You got to do the washing and you got to, do your cell counts and, that's something that's beyond what I care to do. That turns it into work and,
work.
Do that,
What's
right?
work? Todd's not here. I can be honest. What's work? No. Thank you, Tim, so much for submitting your question. I totally got us digressing. I think your answer was in there somewhere. If not,
it was. You can. It will. It's just the lager is clean, and that's what you're after.
There we go. Yeah, I was like, I had to look up what was Tim's question. Oh, jiu-jitsu. That's right. Stay safe on the mats. Guys, it's been so depressing lately. The gym I train at hasn't had a contact class since like April, and I blame all this fat on me because of that. Because they're doing workouts, but it's like mainly calisthenics. I don't exercise. Now people will argue jiu-jitsu is exercise, but I'm a brown belt. I've been doing it for like a decade. I adjust my playing style to where I'm not really exerting that much energy. I'm very efficient with my time and movement. But anyways, I'm digressing even more. Tim, thank you so much for submitting your question. Moving on to question number 2 came from our buddy Daniel, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Daniel wrote, "Hi, Josh, Todd, and handsome James. About a year ago, on a vacation to Boston, I visited the Sam Adams Brewery, which piqued my interest in the hobby. I found your podcast, have listened to all of them at least twice, except for the first 50 episodes." And he wrote, "Shudder." I agree. And I have got to say, you guys are great, very informative and entertaining. Despite what Todd says, I love the small talk, but I'm really happy that you're taking more questions on the show lately, because the more content, the better. After I got back from Boston, I bought a 1-gallon kit to make sure that this is a hobby I would enjoy. After brewing a number of IPAs, brown ales, and porters, I'm hooked. Having listened to you guys,
Cool.
I think my eventual goal is to buy a grain father and brew all grain, but that's out of my price range for the foreseeable future. Until I can do all grain, I would like to have the option to brew mini mash as well as extract. The main reason I want to brew mini mash is because I love a good German beer, and I want to be able to brew your true to style Kolsch and the new and improved alt beer. So I would love your opinion. Right now, in my cart on kegconnection.com, I have a single faucet flow control fridge kit, a 7.5-gallon anvil kettle, a wort chiller, and a couple of carboys. I figure having a good quality kettle will future-proof me for all grain brewing, for heating sparge water, and etc. What do you guys think of my plan? And is there anything else you would recommend I do or purchase to brew extract or mini mash recipe kits successfully? Thank you guys, and keep up the good work and stay safe. Now, Daniel, he is a friend of ours of the show. He interacts with our content a lot. And he listens because he sucked up to us. He called you Handsome James. I love nicknames. He mentions the kegconnection.com kit. He name dropped for me. Like, I didn't even have to inject advertising into that. Like, he hit all the high spots. Wants to brew a Kolsch and alt beer. Like, get this guy to the ranch and let's house him up. That was the quintessential question. Now, granted, it took me 9.5 minutes to read it, but it was a great question. Brewing, I think he's on the right path. Now, I will say before we go into the equipment there, I will say this: the lower or the more affordable options like the Mash and Boil and the Robo Brew are fantastic alternatives to the Grain Father. I'll just say that. Sure. Like, if they're more budget friendly and they're great, or the Anvil, the Foundry. We've had great success and a lot of fun with those. So don't sleep on the more affordable options. Just if you don't have
just because it doesn't have the Wi-Fi app doesn't mean it's not a good product.
Right, exactly. And like I said, there are a lot of and you could even find like what James has on our Gen 1 Mash and Boil, and then do your $20 pump upgrade, like your DIY, and still be very budget friendly. But it's hard to beat because the Mash and Boil with the pump, it's like $3. It's nothing. And I'm saying that, man, I sound like a elitist snob. $300 is a lot of money. But when you compare it to the Grain Father, which even when it goes on sale, which it rarely does, it's still like $8, and it's worth every penny. Don't get me wrong. The Grain Father,
it's got the chiller with
incredible piece of machinery.
It's a good piece of equipment,
and the company supports it like no other. Like people, they just have really good customer service, which. You know how much that means to us as a company, because in our industry, customer service is king, and it's incredible how many companies are bad at customer service. Specifically, some of the ones that are based just out of China and don't have stateside representation. It's hard to how many times
not going to get anything done there.
I'll just say, how many times have you had people call about Chinese dissidents, just like, hey, can you help support this, because they don't have any answers for me. Like, that's not us, right? But anyway, I'm digressing from his question. So to his kid,
looking at that, I'm telling you, he's done his homework. Now, if I'm just assuming that he's got all the other basic stuff, like a good thermometer, stainless steel spoon, some reusable grain bags. If not, always use a grain bag if you're going to do the mini mash. Absolutely, you could do that right now. I know what I was doing mini mashes long time ago. I had a ceramic spaghetti pot, and that's what I used to steep my grains. You just need something that can hold a couple gallons of water, and what I did is I would always use less water because it seemed to be easier to maintain the temperature when I was steeping the grains. But yeah, you've got everything you need. I would do a self-priming racking cane. Um, Everything else looks good to me.
I'll just say that kettle, the Anvil kettles are great. They're gonna last you forever. Anvil, which is owned by Blickman, they are an incredible company. Talking about incredible companies with good support.
Like you said, you can use it for your sparge water, for heating sparge water. When you get done with the mash with the grain father, you have to lift the basket up, turn it, lock it onto the feed onto the tabs, and then you have to physically pour sparge water over the grain bed, and that's a good kettle to have.
The wort chiller, yes, it definitely. I would almost say too, not knowing where he lives, I'm a huge believer in the 2 wort chiller implementation for immersion chillers. If you watched our brew day, like how my pop and I do it, which I learned it from Todd and James, and it's mainly because of our climate here in Texas. We have, I think, 4 days of fall and 2 weeks of winter. And then every other day.
Those 4 days are next week.
Yeah,
I think.
It's next week it's like a hodgepodge of our winter and fall. We totally skipped fall because isn't it freezing temperatures next week? I think it's that cold. Yeah, we just skipped fall. The leaves
and it'll be almost 90 today.
Yeah, the leaves will all die one day. One day they all turn brown, they fall, and that's our fall. We all clap. And then we go back to living our lives and like wearing Hawaiian shirts and shorts. Like, look at you, James. It's almost November. People are gonna be trick or treating this year in bathing suits. But either way, I can't imagine people being disappointed, no matter what their climate is, in the 2 immersion chiller system. And it's usually on sale on Keg Connection or Homebrew Supply as the combo pack, and it's really it makes it. When you can cool your wort down in a fast amount of time, it alleviates a lot of stress to me at least, because as it's cooling, I just am worried the more time that goes, the more variables for something to I don't want anything falling in my batch, because we don't, my dad and I, maybe against our better judgment, a lot of stuff is done openly.
I think that's cool. Yeah, y'all got a perfect place for it too.
I love it totally. Yeah,
do the same thing.
I did a lot of flack sometimes when I post on the interwebs. People are like, "Oh, are you welcoming the bacteria?" Yeah, we are. No, maybe our beer is terrible and I'm just blind to it. But
no.
I think
know what? Here's what I did when I was doing extract brewing: is I do no more than 2.5 gallons in the boil pot on the stove. So I would first and foremost steep my grains, and I'd tend to, it says in the instructions you just don't want to be somewhere around 150 degrees, or I've even had recipes that say 160. But I would pretend I was mashing the grains, so I would get it. I'd have a thermometer setting in there, and I'd be throttling the flame up and down and keeping it at about 150, 152 degrees. And I would do that for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then I would start mixing in my syrup. Well, at the meantime, at the same time, I had 3 gallons of Ozarka water in the freezer. So by the time I got done with the boil and the hops and all that, at the end of that boil, I would add the final sugar addition, stir it up real good, put it in the sink with ice and water. That thermometer's never moved out of the pot. It's still in there. And then I would get it. I would sterilize. I had a funnel, sterilize my funnel, stick it in the carboy, pour the cooled wort in there, and then I would top it off with to get it to five, a little over 5, because I would accommodate for trub loss. And it would usually be between 65 and 70 degrees. Shake the crap out of it, put the yeast in it, and put it in that water bath in the closet in the kitchen, and start throwing the little cold packs in it, and it never failed. It worked great.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall on your but you're I also want to reiterate or bring up, as we do frequently when we talk about extract brewing, is how good a beer you can still produce from an extract brew day. A lot of people poo-poo on the idea of extract only brewers, but my pop, his neighbor, Eric, who had to finally stop brewing, life got in the way and whatnot. But he was only an extract brewer, and many, many, many successful batches, right? And he only did porters and stouts and hundreds of batches. I don't know if hundreds, but a ton, dozens and dozens of batches.
Right.
and never had when we started All Grain Brewing, it was like, how come you never did? It was, I didn't need to. Well, I didn't need
Sure.
to. I'm perfect. And he made his own recipes. People think like Extract Brewing is just, I buy a recipe kit, which is the easy way to go. And, I am a big proponent of specifically James's True to Style Kolsch recipe kit and the new alt beer. They're both phenomenal recipes. But Extract Brewing, you can still make your own recipe. It's even easier when you use a software like Brewer's Friend or
just keep some DME or LME on hand. And then what I would do is I would have some Carapils grain, get you a few pounds of that, put it in an airtight container, get you some 20L and some 60L, and maybe some really dark malt like some Carafa 2 or Black Patent. You could even do some Special B if you want that caramelly, roasty, and then just kind of play around with the steeping additions. But if you don't necessarily have to do like I did and do 30, 45 minute controlled. No, just get it. Don't forget, you got to get the water a little hotter than where you need to be. And there's calculators online that can tell you. You plug in the room temperature, the grain temp, where you want to be and how many pounds, and it'll tell you what temperature the water needs to be. So when you put the grain in there, it'll settle out to the target temperature.
It's phenomenal. These tools, dude. Our live stream audience on our brew day had to have been rolling their eyes because I said, the best time to be alive for a home brewer is now, like 1,000 times. I said it every time I pull up something on Brewer's Friend and type in and it gave me the exact number to a T, and we do it and we get the exact result to a T. I was like, what Westworld simulation are we living in? This is too easy. This is too good. I love it.
And going back to Extract Brewing, our buddy Clay, we've got to get him back on the show, but shout out to Clay. He listens to the podcast every week. He went back to Extract Brewing because he had a killer setup. He had a 10-gallon all grain setup he built himself. Of course, he is an engineer. He's wicked smart. And he went back to Extract beer because he said it's just quicker. He still likes brewing beer, but it just doesn't take near as long. And he's got a Grainfather now and brews with it.
The Extract Brew Day, that is the one thing I envy, is the quick brew day. Oh my gosh. It's so nice to be done in 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's so
or
nice.
Less,
or less. 4 hours because I'm a schmuck. But yeah, I mean, cleaning and I mean, like done. You could be done in a very reasonable amount of time. And then your wife won't keep telling you you're a bad father. And whoa, I'm digressing. But yes, I think to wrap up Daniel's question, your cart looks good. I think you're gonna be very happy. That flow control right out the gate, because I believe that kit comes with an X2, right? That's the flow control with it, or is it the
X1?
Pardon me, the X1. Fantastic faucet that will last forever. The kegging is what I would always recommend people to do when possible.
Is such a pain in the ass.
And then that kettle will future-proof you for a long time as long as you're doing 5-gallon batches when you move on to all grain. Wort chiller, I might recommend getting the second one, but if it's not in your budget, you're going to be fine. And it also depends on
your region. So if it
totally
doesn't get super hot, then it's not needed.
Absolutely. And then your carboys, it looks like he's good to go. So thank you for writing in your question. Let us know if you do need help or support with any of the stuff that you do. And by we, I mean tburns@ketconnection.com. Todd would love to hear from you. So moving on to our third question of the show, came from our buddy Matthew, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Matthew wrote, I have been doing 1-gallon batches, fermenting at about 72 in glass containers with a typical airlock and bottling. I recently got a small fridge in my garage, which will allow me to use different yeast strains, lower and control fermentation temps, and start cold crashing. As I recently have been searching the internet, I have heard a lot about Suckback causing oxidation. What do you guys recommend for temperature controllers for the fridge? Can I continue to use the glass fermenters? And is this Suckback a real concern at the homebrew level? I'm going to be honest with you. Until his question, I never even consider. I mean, I know what suckback is, causing oxidation during fermentation. I never even think about it. I don't do any preventative. No, I don't knowingly do any preventative measures. When we do the blow off tube, it's just sticking it in the bung on the fermenter and then into the bucket or container of sanitizer. I don't know of, like, have you ever had suckback during? And I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Should have done more homework probably. Suckback usually occurs during cold crashing, correct?
That's correct.
Not during primary because of all. It's so vigorous during primary.
The liquid contracts as it cools down. It expands as it heats up.
Right.
So when you're going from 60 in the mid 60s down to 32, when we cold crash, I crank that chiller up and the only thing that bothers me about suckback is it's not oxidation, because you got to remember, for the most part, that whole volume of air above the wort is carbon dioxide, so a little bit, it's like one weed in a huge green luscious yard, it's not going to do a whole lot of damage. It never has in my experience. The only thing that scares me is I've had in the past. This is why it's so important that you put sanitizer. I know guys that use vodka in their airlock. And it's because if you don't do that and you've got regular water, just even tap water that's been sitting in that airlock for 2 weeks, and you cold crash it, it can suck that liquid in the airlock down into the fermenter, and it could cause contamination or an infection. And that's the one thing that always bothered me about suckback. But what we do, and it helps, is I went to the hardware store and I got a 90-degree plastic fitting, and you can go to a parts store and they look like a PCV valve grommet, and you can use that, or you can find something that'll fit the grommet in the airlock, like whether you're using a bung or a plastic bucket. It's still, I would say, a 3/8 hole. So if you do a 3/8 barbed 90-degree fitting, hook it up to a piece of hose and then run that hose down into a bucket, like a half a gallon bucket of sanitizer. Suckback, what happens is as that contracts, it's not going to have enough power to completely pull that all the way through the tube and down into the fermenter. It'll pull it up almost like a liquid in a thermometer, but it won't make it all the way into the fermenter. So you'll be good to go. But as far as if you're using the little bubble airlock, as long as you've got good sanitizer in there, or even, like I said, people use vodka for that reason. If you do get any liquid in there, there won't be a risk of contaminating the beer.
We should do, and I say this all the time, and then I don't end up following through. So I'm going to edit this out. No, I'm not. We should at least show the fitting you did, because it's brilliant, like the way that it works, and it is such a simple addition and solution.
Yeah, it was like $5
exactly
for all the two pieces,
and it solves it.
Yeah. In fact, I think that our local hardware store has the plastic barb fittings and the clear thin wall hose. So, that's not an issue to worry about. First, it's never been an issue for me as far as oxidation with suckback. And you'd have to have a water just shooting down into the wort for that to happen, I would think.
That's what I would think
splashing
too,
for that to occur.
And also, like you said, if you're I like the idea of vodka in the airlock. That's good. That gives me an excuse to have some vodka around the house. But
better you than me.
But do you know people who use water? Because that's news to me if people are still using water in their airlock and not sanitizer.
I did when I first started, before I knew better. I never do that now. It's always sanitizer. In fact, I've got my own little bottle of Sandstep, and there was just a little bit left in the bottom of that quart bottle, and I topped it off with some RO water, shook it up, and that's airlock liquid. So we keep that on hand just in case you need it. From time to time, especially if you have real vigorous fermentation, you can get some trub in the airlock, and I'll swap them out.
Yeah, and that is actually smart because that has a pretty long shelf life too. Like the solution that you're making. To go over his other two parts, recommendation for temperature controllers. So we are so resourceful and old that we still use the 1997 Johnson controls that we've had lying around. My dad loves that one that I took home I don't know how many years ago from the office because we had a bunch of, I don't even know, is Johnson Controls still in the business? They used to be the primo, like, this is what you want for your keezer. And I now I never hear about them. But because I think they're so much more expensive than the alternative, like Inkbird and Anvil has one. The Anvil one, we have a video on our YouTube channel about it. Great, super easy to use, plug in, configure. For my money, I will argue the Inkbird might be the best bang for your buck. That is it the ITC 8?
I agree.
Or that's probably your best bang for your buck. A lot of features and go ahead.
Well, to me, I would say that we both use the Anvil and the Inkbird, and they're both fantastic products. In fact, the Anvil has the best price point. It's pretty easy. It literally looks like an adapter plug that you would use in Europe. You plug it in the wall and you plug that into there, and it's a little taller, and the controller is on the top of that. That would be the only thing about that I didn't really prefer, because I'd like to have the controller closer to where I'm controlling. That way I can adjust it instead of having bend down or stoop down to adjust it on the wall. You know, that's why I like the Inkbird better, but they're both fantastic products. Work great.
They are. And I forgot that, yes, if you're budget minded, the Anvil is a phenomenal deal. Like and when it goes on sale too, I don't have it pulled up, so I'm not going to quote prices, but I do know that even retail everyday price, it's like, dang, how are they getting it that cheap?
I think that thing's less than $30.
It is. It's definitely less than 30. And when it goes on, I want to say last year, didn't they have it out Black Friday for like freaking like 22 maybe? And Inkbird too recently. It's like Inkbird, it has sales all the time. And because I see it on Reddit, y'all love Inkbird Reddit, whatever. But they'll be like, "Oh, we're doing a sale," and Inkbird sells to retailers like us, and they map price retailers, but then they undercut their retailers, which that's their prerogative. It's their prerogative, whatever. It's a little goofy, but the consumer wins because they can go on Amazon every now and then and go, "Oh, an Inkbird for $27 or whatever." And I believe the ITC 8 is the model number. I have so many model numbers in my head.
They're like $24.99 at map price.
Yeah, for the Anvil. Mm-hmm. Yes, correct. And I was just saying, and that the pros is the price, and it works. It works. Mm-hmm. The con is the static nature of the device. You can't when you plug it into the plug, that's where the device stays. So you're configuring it. So if your outlet is behind your keezer, every time you want to configure that, you're pulling your all your equipment out, configuring it, and then moving stuff back. Where like the Inkbird is mountable on a wall, or you can set it on a countertop. It has a lot of, what is that, like a 3 or 4 foot cord from outlet to unit. It's a lot. I mean, it's enough, right? We are using it alongside the Johnson Control because we're doing fermentation chambers.
Wow. It's got a 9.5 foot sensor cable length.
Oh, is it really 9.5? Oh no, that's the sensor cable for the probe. Yeah. I meant from the device to outlet, it's like 3 or 4 feet, which is enough.
On the Inkbird it is, but the Anvil, it plugs right into the wall.
Correct.
So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, correct. And it, but like you said, James, they're both really good devices that work straightforward. But if you don't mind spending a little bit extra money, I think you'd be very happy with the Inkbird. It's very good.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I don't know what Johnson Controls go for. I will say it's a testimony to their product because we've literally had the same Johnson controller for over a decade, and they're going like crazy. Ours that we've dropped it, and we were able to get it working again. It turns out sometimes when you drop stuff, they get finicky and they don't work like they're supposed to.
Quit working.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, damage affects products. I don't understand. But anyways, Matt, hope that you. I think he's going the route that a lot of people don't realize is like pretty game changing for your beers. When you have fermentation temperature control, it's a game changer. I think he's going to start seeing not just being able to use different yeast strains, but a lot more consistency in the results of his beer. And that is huge, especially when you brew a batch you love, being confident that you can brew it again the same way and get the same result. That's like life changing. But anyway, thank you so much for submitting your question, Matt. Moving on to our fourth, and final question for this week's show came from our buddy Garth, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com, and it's my favorite question of this week. He goes, Josh, what does a Kolsch taste like? I want to brew a Kolsch or an alt beer. You guys hype them up so much, but I cannot find one to try at my local liquor store. So I'm wondering what they taste like, or what are they comparable to? Thanks for the great show. They taste like heaven. It's cool. It's like a unicorn and an angel had a love child, and it's bottled up, and it's like a I'm being serious when I say this part. The first time I had Fru with Todd in Cologne, the first thought that came to my mind was cloud. It was so like Fru is my favorite import that we can get in the United States. Peter's Kolsch is my favorite Kolsch of all time. Like
that's mine.
In Cologne, Peter's Kolsch it was like Fru with a little bit more mouthfeel. But
you get the little stang and you get another one.
Another one, and then another, and they're so easy. And more, and then you're dancing on the tables. And the Fru though, like Kolsch to me, a good Kolsch is just so there's not a lot to it, and it's so satisfyingly crisp.
It's so simple.
It's so
a crisp, simple, light, pleasant tasting beer. It's not hop forward at all. In fact, it's very hop backward. Maybe that's why I like it so much, because if you do the BJCP guidelines, it says little to no bitterness or hop aroma, but it's probably one of the most simple, basic, clean, beautifully brewed beers I've ever had.
When done right, because I've messed it up.
You see kind of something like that here in the United States.
Yep.
They call them lawnmower beers. But the problem with the lawnmower beer is their base is probably a Kolsch, but everything, let's admit it, guys, we tend to overdo everything. So if you get a lawnmower beer, chances are the IBUs are going to be way out of whack with the style guideline for a Kolsch. So real similar, but not.
Right. And I know that technically we like they have to, like, people on Reddit or Homebrew Talk will be quick to correct you if you say I brewed a Kolsch. They'll go Kolsch style, because of the German laws that it has to be brewed. Like, they made laws in Germany. It's like champagne, right? It's like that's sparkling wine, you stupid Californian. But I always call, like, your recipe kit, I call it a Kolsch. It is a Kolsch. It's not just Kolsch style. When your recipe for the Truda style, brew correctly, reminds me very much of Fruit and Gaffel. Like, they're not Gaffel, Reisdorf is what I meant. Reisdorf is my third favorite. Fru is my second favorite, and Peter's Kolsch is my first. If we could just get Peter's Kolsch to import, I will pay for the first container of it. Like, it's like Schlussel. What do we got to do to get these two places, Schlussel alt beer out of Dusseldorf and Peter's Kolsch out of Cologne? What do we got to do to get them to import to Austin, Texas? Because I'll pay it.
I don't know.
I came across some money recently, okay? And I had to kill a man, but I came across some money recently looking to invest, and that's what I want. Fru has actually stepped up their import game. They redid bottles. They're putting out mini kegs. They're really pushing it, and not just in our area, like all over the United States. I'm getting people messaging me all the time. Look what I came across in my local liquor store, and I'm like, you're lucky that God has chosen you to experience this. Don't pass this up right now. Buy the beer, man. And Reisdorf does it a lot too. But for alt beer, for the life of me, I wish, Garth, I could tell you, well, go to your store and buy this one, and it's a good alt beer. Even look, unpopular opinion. You know where I'm going with this. Look, Altstadt has an alt beer. It's just not like Dusseldorf alt beer, right? Am I out of line? Do I need to edit that out? Okay,
you're right.
Okay. I mean, it's not bad though. That's the thing, but it's just not. If you held it next to Schlussel, you would see the difference, and not just Schlussel. I mean, Schumacher, you could put it next to, or Uerge, or Fütchen, and there's just something where I think it's like American Kolsch's, where sometimes you're drinking like, okay, I see why they're
maybe it's closer to Diebel's.
That's mean. That's like that most niche
Germans. If there's any Germans listening to this,
I'll just say that was the most niche, super niche inside joke we've ever done on the show. where Horst or Dornbush is somewhere giggling.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that was a good backhanded compliment.
Sorry.
Look, but here's the thing: their lager is great. Their Kolsch isn't bad because I have access to better Kolsch. I don't go out of my way to get their Kolsch, and
Yeah.
I would say this: their alt beer is better than no alt beer, and that's not a backhanded compliment. It's just not. I'm sure people listening can write in and relate in other styles too, where someone goes, "Oh, my favorite version of this beer is done best by these people." And other breweries, they do a version of it, but it's just not comparable.
Well, we know why. It is the alt beer is such a huge balance between bitterness and malt. And when I say malt, I'm talking malty goodness.
Yep.
There's kind of a sweetness to it. The body has to be just so. The hop bitterness has to be just so. They have to marry, so to speak, in your mouth. And every alt beer that we've had, it's either been like the Altstadt tends to be a little overly bitter and not enough sweetness to help that out, in my opinion.
Yep.
The aroma is maybe not quite where it should be. And then you get other places that make the one from Alaska, that alt beer, it says alt style beer on it. It's too sweet, too thick bodied, but maybe not so hop bitterness. The bitterness isn't there. The IBUs on an alt beer is fairly high if you pull up the style guideline and look at it. So it's so incredibly hard beer to brew consistently well that I think maybe the brewers know that, and they tend to stay away from stuff like that because it can go one way or another if you're a purist.
And I will,
or maybe it's just not a style they care to do.
Or it's not going to be popular at the taps. Hops and Grain had their alt called Alteration, which again, it was a solid beer. It was closer to like Alaskans, their amber ale alt style that they call, which I would say, because that's more distributed across the country, try that as an intro to the style, sort of, because there's no other. And you're better off asking your local microbreweries if they ever run batches of alt beer and then trying it. But again, too, that's a crapshoot, because we've had microbreweries in Central Texas we've tried, and one specifically, I won't name names. We've named it on the show before, but I won't do that today. It was a porter that they were serving as an alt beer, and like, oh well, it's like our take on an alt beer. It's like, no, that's not a take on an alt beer. And that's not me being a snot.
It tasted like a stout.
It was a stout, man. It was a poor. Yeah, it was. It was. We've beaten that story with a bat, but I don't know. Like that's the hard thing when we recommend this recipe kits, because people don't know what to compare it to, and I understand that can be terribly frustrating when you're brewing a beer and you're tasting the final product. You're like, I like how it tastes, but it's foreign to me. I wish our Patreon could get a partnership with any Dusseldorf brewery and import some and ship it to y'all, because that's the only way we can tell y'all. Like, if you can't afford to get a plane ticket and go to Dusseldorf, which we can't, we just happen to do it for work, so we know that we're very fortunate.
Yeah, definitely can't.
Yeah, we definitely can't. No, we're not world travelers on our free time, but but if you have the privilege of going to Dusseldorf, that's the only way you're gonna know for sure a true alt beer. And the beautiful thing, like we kind of talked about with Horst, they're all doing their own version of it, but you can still tell. It's not like what we're talking about with some of these breweries stateside we're talking about. They're still alt beers, but it's like this one's a little more subtle with the hops. This one, the malt, the sweet, like Schumacher's dry, and Schlussel's a little bit sweeter, and like they're these finessed little details, but it's still alt beer, if that makes sense. Like it's hard to explain without.
There's no mistaking. Every one of them's alt.
And I feel like a total dork douche for being like, you just have to go to Dusseldorf to try it. But if you have the privilege of doing that, now Kolsch, you can get good. Go get Frü, get Reisdorf, get Gaffel. Those are going to be on most shelves somewhere in your area, and you'll have a great idea of what a Kolsch is supposed to taste like. Alt beer brewers are just failing us. Maybe we need to start distributing our alt beer. It's going to be expensive as hell because we don't have a distributor, but we need to get
the head brewer at Schlussel was like, if you know anybody that might be willing into doing a deal with distribution, we might talk about that. And I was like, I'm so not your guy for that.
You and I are gonna convince Todd to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a failed project, but we're gonna be drunk on Schlussel every night. That would be the dream.
I'll tell you, if somebody could bring it over, import Schlussel over, and really market it well, it would be. It would probably be more than they could handle capacity wise.
I think that too, and I try not to. I try not to overvalue my opinion, because I understand there are people who drink alt beer and they don't like it, and then I block them out of my life because I don't need that kind of negativity. But it like you say, like look, I love Kolsch. Kolsch is my go-to, and I love it. But at the second, like that Schlussel keg, a drop of it touched my tongue, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. It's just hard to explain, especially I like alt beer. I mean, I like Kolsch all the time. Alt beer is great for right now. Like it has
it's a good fall beer.
It's a good fall beer, man. It's a good beer anytime, but for fall especially, it's a good compromise for me. And it's so clean, and it's so bright, and it's so crisp, but it's not a lager. It is it is
an ale yeast. It's probably the same. I don't know this for sure because I know the guy that I talked to at Schlussel, he wouldn't divulge. He said it was proprietary. They use open fermentation, but I would suspect the strains of yeast between Kolsch and alt beer are probably a whole lot more similar than they are dissimilar.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that too, mainly because of geography too, right? Like the history of it. Like they're right next to each other, these towns. Like I would imagine,
and they're both lagered like a lager.
Exactly, they're both
they ferment
hybrid beers, right? And what most beer books call them is a hybrid ale. They call them hybrids because of the colder temperatures that you're fermenting at. But anyway, Garth, to wrap up your question, they're the best beer styles in the world. Period. Kolsch and all. And if I had an investor to fund my terrible idea of an American brew pub that only served alt and only served Kolsch, I would invite you over. But Todd has not greenlit that project yet. So
no, now I would do alt, Kolsch, and Pils. That's all I would do.
You're right, and you're right, and that's almost similar to what Altstadt's doing. And I'm taking my wife to Fredericksburg on our anniversary in December, and I'm going to take her there because I've heard the brewery is phenomenal. I've heard that the environment is phenomenal. It's
gorgeous.
It's going to very much remind me of
it when you see it.
Yeah. And again, and I hope people know when we just because we don't like their alt as an alt doesn't mean we don't like them there as a brewery. It's just like we don't want to lead you down. Like if you were tasting that and basing your alt off of that, we think you're maybe doing the style a disservice. That's all. We want you to not conflate that they're all, and now I'm starting to sound rude. It's not our favorite alt. How about that? It's just not our favorite alt. But I bring it and I drink it at Todd's. Look in his beer fridge. I usually bring a sitzer to him like every other month, and I'm the only one drinking.
And those guys there are great. They are as friendly of people as you'll find. They have a cool. They do the growler cans, and it's really neat
and I will end with the compliment on them because we do like them genuinely. Their lager is good. It's very good.
Yeah.
I like their lager on the beach. I like their lager in the bath. I like their lager. It's a good lager. So with that compliment,
and they have an actual genuine German brewmaster that's brewing over there
on the most German of looking systems and the most German of looking brew houses. Central Texas has a good, strong German community between New Braunfels and Fredericksburg. And so I am excited to take my wife there. But anyways, Garth, thank you so much for submitting your question. This is a great reminder now that it's towards the end of the show that when we take your question on air, we give you a $25 gift certificate to kegconnection.com, courtesy of the absent Mr. Burns. Thank you, Todd, for your generosity. James, that does it for this week, my friend. I'm sorry I took all your time digressing our questions into small talk.
I always enjoy doing it.
Well, I appreciate it. I am going to, actually not next week, pardon me, because I'm coming up for that full week during election week. So I will see you virtually next week.
All right, sir.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, homebrewsupply.com, for supporting us and the home brewing community. Right now, get 15% off homebrew kegerator kits, plus any keg of ball lock or pin lock refurbished for only $30 when bought with the kit. Limited time offer available at homebrewsupply.com. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.